all you can see is Calico Head. But she's so sweet. Hey. Hey there, this is your pal Pallie, and welcome back to Overrated. This is episode number 46 or so. And this is the episode talking about advanced DPS logging. So last episode, on 45, we talked about how to get set up with the basic logging utilities. Those were Warcraft Logs and World of Logs. Ever since, for the last month or so, another candidate has come along, which is the Ask Mr. Robot infographics. Basically, you can upload your logs to them and get a lot of other fancy utilities and cool stuff. So, you can check that out as well at askmrrobot.com. We're not going to get into that kind of stuff tonight, but today we're going to be talking more about how to dig deeper into looking at a DPS and what they do and all that other kind of stuff. Got many cats, one right here off camera. There he is. Here's a tail. Here's a cat tail. It's all for you. Okay, enough cat tail. Enough cat tail. But just quick announcements. I am putting out point of view videos for Blackrock Foundry. I have pretty much, well, we've downed 8 bosses on Heroic and Blackrock Foundry. Got Iron Maiden, still have Blast Furnace and Blackhand to go. I have I got 7 of 8 of those point of view videos out. I do also have a guide to Gruul on Heroic, so yay. Got a guide up and I'm going to continue that. I'll probably, after this recording, go to another one, probably Orgorger. I would also appreciate any feedback on those new guides, because I'm trying to do it in a different style, maybe not style, but a different conversational type talking. I'm trying not to script it out as much. I'm trying to make it just flow a little better. So let me know if the Gruul guide and Orgorger and those ones feel better, you know, whatever. Just trying to prove myself. If it doesn't work out, go back. I've got many other things to try. So anywho, thanks for the short deviation to talk about my other stuff, the raid guides. Anywho, heading into advanced DPS logging. Alright, so last week we talked about some basic stuff, seeing what people's DPS are, what effective DPS is, that kind of stuff. This week we're going to more dig into a couple of different things. It is going to be a bit more spec specific, so I am going to talk hunters again a little bit, and my paladin if it's useful. But I also want to talk about evaluating DPS and raid members in general with the tools that we have here. So again, I'm going to be looking at Warcraft Logs and World of Logs and giving you sort of tips and tricks on what to do there. So let's switch on over to the web browser and take a look at what we've got. So this is again just logs from our recent raid night. I guess this was last Tuesday, yeah, the 10th. And this was our first farm night. So this was our first let's re-kill all the bosses on that we killed last week, which is certainly a fun night to do things and make sure we've got bosses down. We did have to refine some strategies and get some things looking better, but hey, they did. We got our farm down and got a couple more bosses down, so yay. So taking a look at Flamebender, Kara's right here. There are, of course, I am somewhere on these charts. I'm way down here. Yay. Again, raid later debuff. You do 15% less DPS. All good. Now, anywho, this is one of those fights where we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about digging into my DPS versus someone else, which would be this guy, Loot. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to look at how we executed in the fight ourselves. So, taking a look first at myself and Loot, who is the other hunter who was in the raid. His item level is behind mine, and he has a worst weapon, so I should be out DPSing him in general, of course. But let's take a look at the details and damage breakdowns per spell. And this is, of course, one of my first tips. I dove right into this, but what I'm doing here is trying to look at a comparable player and see what he did versus what I did in the same fight, or at least the same length of fight. In this case, I'm really lucky because I have someone who was in my raid who had the exact same fight length, buffs, etc., etc. So there's a pretty direct comparison in terms of that. The only differences, of course, are the gear and our actual skill at playing, the specs and such. So again, last week we talked a little bit about looking at uptimes on things. So that's a real simple, quick comparison. So here's Loot with a 99% uptime on Serpent Sting, and then 71% on Black Arrow. Remember, Black Arrow can only be a maximum of 74 or 75. Sorry. So quickly looking over at my uptimes, Serpent Sting was less, so I let it fall off a lot more, 92%, and my Black Arrow is less as well, 68%. So immediately there are some obvious differences between him and me on some of those key survival hunter things to look at. You certainly can look at sort of the number of casts, the number of things we did in general to see, am I choosing to do one thing or another over, making sure my Black Arrow's up. So, for example, so how many arcane shots did I hit? Well, first of all, you got to look at, for World of Logs, you got to break that down into like hits and crits, because that's actually different. So that's 55 plus 24, which is 79. Woo, math on the fly. For Loot here, his arcane shots were certainly a lot more. He was casting it a lot more, and a lot more crits and everything. So, shot choice is one of those things that we've got here. Now, there's also a difference between him and I in terms of talent. So he's been using Focusing Shot. You don't see Focusing Shot anywhere on my breakdown, so we have a difference in talent choices right there. And maybe I need to try that talent out as opposed to, I think I'm using Thrill of the Hunt. Is that what's on that tier? Anyway, no, that's not what's on the tier. Anywho, you can take a look at, I'm using Lone Wolf on that, because that's the top tier. Focusing Shot replaces everything. So he's doing that. I've got Lone Wolf, which is a more passive talent, which in general Blizzard seems to make it such that the passive talent does pretty good, but if you really get a chance to play the active talents that you can work with and get used to them, they usually end up coming out higher in DPS. So there's Focusing Shot, making up some difference between him and I in terms of the shot selection and everything else. One other thing to look at in terms of comparing us would be to look at our cooldown usage. So for that, I'm going to go over to Warcraft Logs and take a look at analyzing the damage done. And again, I'm going to pull us both out. You can actually put these in both tools. You can put people up at the same point and compare graphs and overlay them. It's even a bit more complicated than that, but I just wanted to note that. So again, we still have the same uptimes between Loot and I that Warcraft Logs was talking about. But one thing to call out as well is usage of cooldown. So we've got Murder of Crows being used on a regular basis. That's a 1-minute cooldown. This is for me. And then for Loot, he is also using Murder of Crows on a similar cooldown. If you're just looking at yourself or trying to evaluate someone who you may be wanting to bring into your raid group, this is one of those key areas that you can sort of look at this graph really quickly and go, okay, there's this DPS cooldown. It's a 1-minute cooldown. Are they using it on a regular basis, and could they have used it more effectively on stuff? So, you know, for example, Murder of Crows is one of those weird talent things that you can do where if you put it on something and it dies within its duration, you get the cooldown reset and you can again put it on something else. So optimizing Murder of Crows, there's actually, depending on the fight, of course, but there's actually a nice way to do it if you can do it right, where, you know, say that this is Flamebender, Kagras. It's got, you know, one guy that you kill really quickly, but then it's the boss for the most part. But then there are wolves that come out, 2 ads. And they're DPS priority, of course, and we'll talk a bit about DPS priorities and tracking those. But you can, you know, just as the wolf is getting down to maybe 20% or something, maybe if you put Murder of Crows on there, you can sort of time it such that, you know, its duration is what? Before I figure this out, Murder of Crows is a, oh, great, thanks for the tooltips. Let's quickly look at the tooltip in wowhead.com. Anyway, say the duration is 15 seconds. I think it's longer than that, but say the duration is 15 seconds. If you know that the ad's going to die within 10 seconds, you can go, alright, put that on there, it ticks for the 10 seconds, the thing dies, you get a reset cooldown, bam, go put it on the boss, and now you've used it even more effectively. So you can tell that we both didn't have any situation where we did that. I actually put it on the ad at the start. On the pull, I put it on Aknor Steelbringer. On some pulls, I believe, I think some pulls of this, we wiped 5 times to this guy. And I want to see, yeah, see here, no, that's not correct. There were some pulls where I was able to get, we killed that ad so quickly that I was able to get a reset on the cooldown. Oh, I'm not going to find it. This is going to be a terrible example. Actually, no, there it is. So I was able to get a reset on it. No, I wasn't. Alright, anywho. You kind of understand what I'm talking about. If I were to get a reset on it, this would show, okay, it was on Aknar Steelbender, and then all of a sudden this would have another bump here where I put it on the boss, on Flamebender. Again, terrible example. I thought I had one of these examples, but apparently I didn't. But anywho, you get the point. There'd be another little hump here showing me using it again in a quick succession. Now, obviously, the boss is going to die way before, you know, it's not going. I'm not going to catch it like that. But those are some of those advanced little things that you can look up, and if you're really, really skilled with that particular ability, you can work at it and see if you can catch those types of things. This is akin to some of that dot clipping stuff from Warlocks, just that kind of stuff. So, you know, there you go. That's sort of one example of tracking cooldowns. Now, certainly for hunters and for many other classes, you can sort of dig into their own raid cooldowns, their own, you know, things that they're bringing to the table. So, you know, taking a look back at, let's look at this Ret Paladin here. Alright, so we do have his damage, we have all of his other stuff, but more importantly we have execution sentence. And this is one of the, well, okay, that's damage done by all execution sentences in the raid, which is not what I wanted to look at. But you can look at how many usages of execution sentence were there within the raid. Now this thing ticks for, yeah, this one gets a little bit more complicated. You sort of have to do some math on this, but you had 63, 9, you had 72 ticks of it. So how many usages of that would there be? Let's guess. This is a 6-minute. It's a 1-minute cooldown. I do know that. And it goes for 10 seconds. It looks like 6 usages of it, which means it ticks 9 times? 6 times 9? No, more than that. Anywho, you get the point. There was an uptime of this of 60 seconds, which means for 10 seconds, 6 times. Doing some quick math again. Math, hard to do this on the fly, but hey, there you go. Anywho, he got 6 of them off during this fight. Is that good or bad? Well, at the very least, you can look up at the total time of this fight. It was a 6-minute fight, and you want people using all of their big cooldowns over the course of a fight. So again, looking at those cooldowns like that, execution sentence, murder of crows, there's a billion of them for different classes. You look at mages and their mirror images, etc., etc. Mages or warlocks, doom guards, all that kind of stuff. Look into those and make sure people are using them across the entire fight and everything. Now, that's just sort of simple looking at cooldowns. You can also add in here sort of being able to look at what lined up and everything. So, for example, let's add Avenging Wrath, which is a cooldown for paladins that is 2 minutes? Yes, should be 2 minutes. And also add in Strength Potion, and that'll be good for now. So this is saying when he popped Avenging Wrath, which is big damage cooldown, doing 20% more damage. There's some mixing with your mechanics, with your actual rotation and stuff for a rep paladin. At the same time, we made sure that the Draconic Strength Potion was also lining up with that happening. So, good. You like to see those things lining up in some cases. You can also sort of look at, well, at the same time was Time Warp popped. Well, we popped it at the beginning. So yes, people are usually running in, doing their opening rotation, popping their pre-pot, etc., and getting those things off. But you could even look at, let's see, those players that do things really well try to line up things to also go on major cooldowns, major procs of things. So you got something like the Mark of the Bleeding Hollow, which is their weapon proc, the weapon enchant proc, and you can see the uptime of that. You would hope as well that a proc of that was happening while you were doing your strength and your Avenging Wrath at the same time. So again, just pretty simple examples for a rep paladin. But there are sort of other examples, like for a marksmanship hunter, you would be looking for when's the usage of rapid fire, is that lining up with procs of Thrill of the Hunt, or on their opening rotation, how many chimera shots are they getting off, how many aim shots are they getting off before time warp runs out, just that kind of stuff. So this goes even deeper into the actual analysis of a rotation and how people are doing with their spec and class. Again, like I said in the last episode, if you really don't know what all of this is, I'm trying to give you some glimpses on how to pick out stuff and compare things and do stuff. But if you really don't know a class or a spec, you really should, check out some class forums on MMO Champion or, other places, and get some sort of in-depth knowledge and sort of have someone help you with what to look for. Because you can really get deep into these things and all of a sudden you're, lost and whatnot. So that's, of course, looking at straight up DPS. How are they doing their rotations and everything? we're going to hop over to Warcraft Logs to take a look at more about how people were executing. And I'm going to pop back to World of Logs as well at some point, but Warcraft Logs and World of Logs are getting these sections together now that allow you to see sort of what problems there were within a raid, what was the fight analysis, what was good, what was bad. So at the very least, right at the top, the easiest thing in the world for a raid leader or raid or guild to look at is whether someone was double potting. Were they using 2 pots? And by the way, Ask Mr. Roback also has a nice little section like this that sort of tries to break down how individuals are doing on a fight. One of their first things on there, potions. Did everyone use 2 potions during the raid? So you can see sort of 1 DPS out here didn't have 2 pots. These were 3 tanks. These are some healers. This is a healer. This is a healer. So there you go. So right away you get the potion usage. But if you're also trying to figure out how well is this DPS doing executing mechanics and such, all of this, and of course avoiding damage, all of these nice analysis tools that Warcraft Logs and Ask Mr. Roback, etc. are coming out with sort of start to help you break that down. So for this encounter, avoiding many different things, like, so looking at something like Charring Breath, these 2 players actually got hit with the breath from one of the dogs in the encounter. So that's a bad thing. They were not in the right place, or maybe the dog turned around right away and the tanks couldn't get them back quick enough. But something happened here where there was some avoidable damage, and they took that avoidable damage. So you can again look through all the sources of avoidable damage and see what people were taking. What's Devastating Slam? That's the guy at the beginning of the raid. Lava Slashes. Don't want to bounce those to people, etc., etc. So what is Singe? Oh, Singe is the damage between the links of the dogs, the wolves on that encounter. So taking a bunch of that means you were running through the link. So Frisky, who is my new GM now, way to go, Frisky. Ran through some fire, which he may have mitigated it with something. So whatever. He didn't die, obviously. But anywho, that sort of starts to help you break down and see if there are problems with how a DPS is executing. Now, let's go back to World of Logs. And now, we sort of want to take a look at one of those really hard to remember. This is a thing that raid leaders have a hard time remembering to look at. So this sort of, as we break this down, you can look at the damage taken by an ad, by a boss, by whatever, and see that everyone is actually attacking them, and that everyone is actually going after them. So this is sort of, let me break this down real quick. These are the Cinder Wolves. This is the ads that come out during the fight. This is during the kill, and this is looking at damage by actor. So this is saying this is how much damage the ad did on people in the raid. For the most part, it's tanks. Cool, that should be right. But the rest of it is how much damage individual raid members did on wolves. So this tells you people are focused on them and killing them. And it's the same thing as for last tier. If you were looking at trying to down Garrosh on heroic, normal, mythic, whatever you're trying to do him on, the fight starts out with like 1 million ads running all over the place and just massive cleave amount damage. So just looking at damage done on that Garrosh fight was pretty useless. It was like, oh, well, okay, people can AoE like mad for 5 seconds and all of a sudden they're, topping the charts. But what smart raid leaders were looking at is how much damage were people doing to Garrosh himself. Because that, in many cases, in many parts of that fight, that's what you really cared about. You really wanted to make sure that people were focused on him as opposed to something else. This is the same principle. This is saying those wolves in this fight, those are a DPS priority. You need to get those down. So this is saying, out of your whole raid, who had the most damage on those particular things. Meaning, they were able to focus on them, they were able to hurt them, kill them, whatever. So yay, Roxar, Farron, myself, woohoo, yay. We were the top 3. Looking further down, and I mean, okay, we were the top 3. Roxar had 7.6%, 6.5%, 6.4%. From here on out, most people are doing close to 5.5%. So you can't say like, oh well, Bone Lock did way worse than Awaka because whatever. These are all pretty close to the middle. Someone gets a lucky crit, they're 4th as opposed to 8th or something. So again, don't worry about these things. But if you see someone like way down here, way to go, Wabbits, you didn't actually, that's a healer. Don't worry about that. But no, if you see someone sort of way down here and go, huh, that person is a DPS and the priority is supposed to be that DPS thing, why are they not target switching enough to kill that thing that's important? And there are many ways to pull that information out of these logs, and I hope you've seen this example at least to say, huh, if we're working on, Blast Furnace, for example, and you see Blast Furnace is actually one of those fights in here where it's actually really important to single target the target that we need done right now. There are a million ads running around. It is real easy to just throw up your AoE rotation and just go, whoa, yeah, I'm doing 50, 60k, haha, suckers. Yeah, you're doing that much damage, but not to the right thing. So when the Slag Elemental pops the Primal Elementalist's shield, that Primal Elementalist needs to die as soon as frickin' possible. There's no like if, ands, or buts. There's no like, well, gradually get this other thing down and then focus on this. No, it's switch, kill it, quick, now. So seeing how many people, where people rank in terms of who's killing a slag element or a primal elementalist the most, that's an important thing to look at. And if you see people way at the bottom of that, you can go, hey, yo, that's supposed to be the target over here. Why were you killing this thing? WTF. So if you're having trouble, again, this is more, this is a bit more going into the looking at a raid wipe and deciding what's happening type function. But looking at a kill, you can also say, all right, look, the best people for focusing in on the thing that needs to die, whatever that thing is, normally it's going to be the boss, but there's going to be a lot of times when you need it to be something else. Who are those people? And logs give you those answers. Certainly, going back to Warcraft logs and looking at sort of the fight analysis and all of that kind of stuff, that will give you a lot of those pieces of, we're handling this mechanic well, we're not handling this mechanic well, et cetera, et cetera. There's the problem section. There's going to eventually be for Warcraft logs and World of Logs and Ask Mr. Robot, also these things. There's also going to be sections on how are we handling the major mechanics. But for now, you can get some of that. I mean, they're not doing anything other than looking at the same data and pulling it out in a relevant, nice fashion for you. You can do that with any of these tools and get the same information for yourself. So, if there were no fancy features ever again in a log analysis tool, you could still get to the relevant information. It would be a little bit dicier in how you get there, but you could still do it. So, get familiar with these things, because early on, if the fancy fight analyses aren't there, if they may be wrong, etc., you can still get the relevant information out of it all. So yeah, alright, I think we've beaten that one a little bit to death. But it's important. It's important. You want to be able to analyze DPS by their spec and their rotation, cooldown usage, that kind of stuff, and then as well, how good are they target switching, or analyze what exactly you're getting out of people. And I mean, even, this fight doesn't have any dispels or interrupts or anything, but you get a fight like Bracken Spore, and you really need some hardcore interrupts on that big ad. Who's your best interrupters? You get, boom, right there. Look at those things. So, anywho, that's probably it for talking about these pieces. Certainly, whenever you're looking at wipes, you also will be looking at deaths. I think we'll have a whole section of this series on death logs and looking at why people died and all that other kind of fun stuff. But for now, okay, you got some additional info to help you out in analyzing. So awesome. I'm probably going to end that here because I am losing my voice, as you can see. I'm coughing like mad. No, seriously, I am. But yeah, throat problems right here. But anywho, last few announcements. I am going to try to make this show every other week. I think every week is going to be a little bit too tough to catch it and make sure I'm producing a decent show every week. So every other week schedule, every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Central. I'll be streaming it over at twitch.tv/GetterRaid. A couple more announcement type thingies. I am starting up, well, I'm not starting up, but I am appearing on and co-hosting on another podcast, which for now is called Guildmasters, and that's over at guildmasters.org, and that's with the famous Maticus. We're just talking guild leadership type things, officer type things. Last episode we were talking about how to fix attendance problems, that kind of stuff. So head on over there, guildmasters.org, to check out, the first episode I think is already up. Maybe it's not. We'll see. But anyway, head over there for many other fancy articles and cool stuff. And eventually we'll be able to send questions in and go, hey, my guild is having problems with this. Help me out. And we'll answer your question. Hey, more helpful stuff. I'm still appearing and co-hosting on the Edge podcast, and that is every Tuesday live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that is over now at twitch.tv/theedgepodcast. Again, I'll put links and stuff in the descriptions and put it across and whatnot. As I also said, I have live guides coming out for Blackrock Foundry Heroic Raids. So Gruul Heroic is here. You can go click on that and see it. And I'll be having additional guides come up. There'll be nice little playlists that have it listed out, and you can see them as they come out. All that kind of stuff. And if you want to know the latest of what's coming out for me, certainly follow me at GetterRaid on Twitter, because that's where I'm usually announcing stuff or going, hey, here's a heart-shaped pizza for Valentine's Day. Yeah, it's awesome. What? Don't judge. Don't judge. Yeah, so Twitter is probably the best place to follow me for announcements and throw me questions and say hi and go whatever. Certainly I'm reading the YouTube comments and all that other kind of awesome stuff. And lastly, one more thing. I want to special shout out to fans and people who are watching my videos. We did the Edge last week, and Sean Felice from that was introducing me as he normally does, and he was like, and his video for Imperador Heroic has 50,000 views, and I was like, what? I was sitting there like for 5 seconds going, he's like, I just introduced you, dude, go. I was just sitting there going, 50,000? What? So, thank you a huge amount for viewing my guides and commenting and making them useful and such. I just couldn't believe that's like the highest total I've had for a guide. I know I am not, one of the big guys for guides, so to speak, but 50,000 views, man, that's a lot. That's a lot for me. So thank you very, very much. I very much appreciate that. And if they're useful, and like I said at the beginning of this show, if you like the new style, the new vocal style of the Gruul guide, let me know. If you don't, you want to go back to the more scripted, sort of a little more monotone. I don't know. I'm working on it. Always up for suggestions. And eventually, probably in the next few months, I'll get to that thing that I said about making the guides look a bit more visually drawing in the beginning. I don't know. Lots going on. Huge amount of going on. But anyway, I did want to say, call out, thanks for the massive amount of hits and views and subscriptions and all that fun stuff. I mean, I'm already getting close to 2,000 subscriptions after this, from the beginning of High Mall up, it's been from 1,000 up to 2,000, really, oh my god. So, again, very many thanks. Keep spreading the word that there's some fun stuff. There's some cats. We got some cats in this episode, so you gotta be happy. And as always, comment, like, subscribe to the videos if you found them helpful. Get a raid, Pallie, yay. Alright guys, that's it for now. Ramble time is over. Have a good one.